Alright, hi, I'm Devin.
I'm Jake.
And we're going to show you how to install a Classic Instruments SN35 fuel sender.
We got our trusty tape measure. We're going to measure the depth at the sending unit position, which looks to be about 7 3/4 inches. We go with 1/2 inch intervals on the chart, so what you're going to want to do is go with the closest, you're going to round down to the closest half. So we're going to use the 7 1/2 inch, and we'll just mark that. Okay, so we need to remove the washer and the nut and the ring terminal that the rheostat connects to the top assembly. And we're going to save this washer and this screw because we're going to need to reconnect it after we're done modifying the assembly.
Put those away for safekeepings and remove your wire.
We're going to remove 2 screws that are holding the bottom part of the assembly to the top part. You're going to have to loosen and remove the nuts, and then you're also going to unthread the screws that are into the assembly. And these nuts and screws you do not need again.
Once all those screws are discarded, you're going to have 2 separate pieces.
Yeah, we're going to take those 2 screws out so that we can remove the rheostat assembly. And keep a hold of these screws because you'll need them later.
We'll remove the support arm and we'll discard this piece too.
We're going to slide the rheostat onto the rheostat support arm, and we're going to make a mark about that is where the center of the pivot point needs to be. And on our chart, letter B is saying 3 3/3 from the bottom of the mount or the mounting plate. So we're going to mark 3 3/4. We're going to.
That's where we'll tighten it down for our final assembly.
Right. So we got the 3 3/4. What we're going to do is mark the bottom of the assembly on the support arm there. Okay. Now we're going to take your rheostat back off. And we're going to go cut this rheostat support arm to the mark that we just made.
This will prevent any burrs from getting inside your gas tank and possibly damaging a fuel pump or plugging something or clogging a fuel filter. So just remove the burrs.
We're going to put the rheostat back on so that the float arm side of the rheostat is towards the center of the support assembly.
Slides on like this.
Okay, and we're going to measure the pivot point, which should be pretty close, but it's going to be 3 3/4. So we're going to measure again 3 3/4 from the bottom of the mounting plate to the pivot point of the
There.
Okay, and then we're going to use the 2 screws we took out earlier, and we're going to secure the rheostat assembly to the rheostat support arm. Wrap it around the rheostat support arm a couple times so that it doesn't interfere with the flow.
Reinstall the lock washer and hex nut. For shallow tanks, you might need to use a wrench to do the final tighten, as the rheostat could interfere with the operation of a nut driver. Just snug that up. Make sure that this ring terminal is not contacting the support arm. Make sure that it's just turned away when you do the final tightening.
Okay. So the float arm assembly, we're going to loosen the nut or the screw holding the 1-inch rod, and we're going to discard that 1-inch rod from the rheostat. That's just there for shipping purposes. Then we're going to go back to our chart and find out what length we need to put the float on, or we need to cut the float on. First we're going to look here, it says 4.5 inches. So we're going to make a mark from the center of the float, 4.5 inches. We're going to make a mark on the float arm. Now what we're going to do is slide that into the rheostat, making sure the float arm side is towards the side that says float side, and we're going to get that position so that our mark is approximately in the center of where our nut or our screw is. Then we're going to mark the float arm right just beyond the point where it hits the stop on the rheostat assembly, about 1 inch from the pivot point. Now we're going to take that out and we're going to cut off the excess from that mark we just made.
You'll end up with a rod about this length for our tank.
So we're going to reinsert the float arm so that our center pivot point mark is in the center of the screw, and we're going to tighten the screw up, keep that float in.
We're going to just do a quick, simple gravity test, and ours is doing good. Take it around the float first and stretch it carefully around the rheostat housing. It's an offset 5-hole pattern, so there's only one way it can go.
So we're going to get our gauge, and we're going to hook up some test wires. We're going to hook up the signal
Wire to the signal post.
Signal wire for the gauge up to the signal post on the sender. We're going to ground the post next to it on the sender. And then of course we're going to hook up our battery power and battery ground.
We'll hook up 12 volts. Now with the float in the down position, we should be at empty. on the gauge. Raise it up to the up position, and it should be at full.
Cool.
And you're good.
Alright, so we know it works. Insert the sender into the tank.
It's a little bit of a squeeze, but it should fit. You want to align your 5-hole flange on the tank. And using the supplied screws and O-rings, bolt your flange down to the top of the tank.
Once you have that all bolted in, all the 5, you're going to hook up your signal wire to the center post, and you're going to hook a ground wire from a chassis ground to the ground post, which is right next to the center signal post.
Once it's all in and tightened, that's a complete installation of an SM35.